Welcome back. Today's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to talk to you about how to break limits. This is probably the most valuable failure lesson that I've ever learned in my life. And I can't wait to tell you this story about how it got started for me. Now, before I get into that, we're going to do little things a little bit different. If you will, I want to thank everyone for supporting and getting this channel and getting this podcast and everything else growing the way that it is. So, and let's continue to do that. It's been an absolute joy in my life to be able to do these things. So if you will, to support this, please go ahead and subscribe, follow, and share this, if you will, if this story helps you out. So with that under the way, it all started back in high school. Now, I won't tell you my age or anything like that. It's kind of irrelevant based upon the story and the subject, but I'm not ashamed of it. It's because I learned this lesson back when I was 18. So before the days of Google, there was a cross-country meet, and we had to travel, quite a distance to get to this meet. It was a 5K, which is 3.1 miles for those of you that aren't, avid runners. So 3.1 miles, and we had to go to this Danville, Virginia road race. And I remember getting on the bus that morning about 5 o'clock in the morning to make this trip, to make this race. And the whole time I got on the bus, someone said, "Hey, John Hinton's going to be there." So this, like I said, this is before the days of Google, and my ignorance level was at an all-time high, and I had no idea who he was, nor did I ask. But it upset me that someone else's name would be mentioned on my bus. It upset me. It infuriated me to the point that I was focused and was wanting to prove myself against the unknown person. So for however long we were driving and we were making our way to this actual event, I kept hearing that name, John Hinton, John Hinton. And it just, every time I heard his name, it was like a screw that just got turned a little bit tighter, just a little tighter. And so when we finally showed up, I stepped off the bus with intent of finding this person. And it hadn't occurred to me, and like I said, in all of my glorious ignorance, it hadn't occurred to me that I have no idea what this guy looks like, where's he from, anything about the man other than his name. I have no idea. And I get off the bus and there's like 1,500 people walking around. And because I am a tedious person and probably had anger issues, I'm still looking for this person. Not knowing even if I walked across them, what I would say or what it would look like or anything. I have no idea. But I'm focused on finding this one person in this crowd of like 1,500 people. We walk around for about 45 minutes and I almost forget about him. Almost. When it's time to start the race, we walk the course and everything just to see where it is. And it's a road race. Road races run a little bit faster than, on the trails, because you don't have to deal with the same elements. You don't have to deal with the same pavements and foot. So it's a little bit faster. And we get to the starting line. And I almost forgot about John Hinton. We get to the starting line and the starter, the race starter, the guy with the pistol, and I don't know his official title or name, but he gets up to the line and he says, if anybody can run this race in under 20 minutes, take a step forward from the crowd. Because there's so many people that's in this race, he wanted to take a step forward from the crowd. At the time, I was running around 18 minutes or something like that, so I take a step forward. And he says, if anybody can run in 19, take a step forward. Okay, so I take a step forward. And if anybody can run 17 and under, take a step forward. I know that it's a road race and I know that it's going to be crowded. So I take a step forward just to kind of give me a little bit of that comfort room because I have a long stride and I was like 6 foot and I wanted to make sure that my feet didn't get tripped up. And because if you go down in one of those kind of races and you got 1,500 people behind you, chances are you're going to get trampled. Chances are, you fall on something, somebody's going to step on you. And I just didn't want that and ruin it. And when he says that, he then says, "Will John Hinton please come to the front?" And immediately, everything that I felt from 5:30 that morning till just now came right back to me. I was fueled with the same kind of anger and hatred, and I was fueled. So upset at this man I've never met before who probably didn't know I existed. But now I knew what he looked like. And I was laser focused on the back of his head. You ever caught tunnel vision where you couldn't see anything else but the thing in front of you? That's exactly where I was. And the gun goes off, pow! And I am running for this guy. I know it's a race, but let me say that again. I'm running for this guy. I did not even pay attention to the other 1,499 people. I am focused on this one gentleman. And I can remember the back of his neck 20-something years later. I can remember the back of his haircut. I can remember he had a fade. I was running on him, and I was so focused on the back of his head. I had no idea how tall he was, no idea what he looked like, but just the back of his head. I was laser focused. I got to the point that we were running, and every step he took, I tried to make sure that my foot hit right up underneath his so he could hear my footsteps. I tried to make sure that I breathed hard enough that my breath would graze his shoulder. And I remember him kind of looking over his shoulder to see who was there. And I said, "Yep, I'm here, and I'm going to be here all night." That's how focused I was on beating this person and proving to this person, and how dare he have his name mentioned on my bus, which he had absolutely no control over. He had no idea who I was. And I remember going around that corner and just every step of the way we were going through downtown. I had no idea. I was not focused on anything else but this guy's head. And after a while, I heard a familiar voice. And this familiar voice said something to me, and it pulled me out of my mode for a second to where I lost focus on the back of his head. And that voice said to me, it was my track coach, and he says, "I don't know what you're doing." And he called out my mile time. Now, keep in mind, I said before I was running around 18 minutes and so on and so forth, just keeping myself kind of in that pace. And we had a gentleman on our team that was legitimately faster than me, but I did not think that he was not in front of me. I did not think about that. I didn't think about where I was. I didn't think about what I was doing. I just focused on the back of his head. And I used to pace myself around a 6-minute time frame and then go 6-minute intervals, which leaves me around the 18-minute mark. That's what I normally would do. But in this particular case, my coach called out 4:45. I had never ran under 5 minutes, even when I just had to run a mile at that time. And I still have 2.1 left to go. This totally broke my confidence level. It shook me up. And I remember my coach's words of, "I don't know what you're doing." And it threw me off. It made me doubt myself for a second too. It made me step out of my head. Wait a minute. If I'm doing a 4:45 right now, this guy's on pace for 14 minutes. And it made me start doing math in my head. It made me start doubting every one of my steps. It made me start shaking myself out of like, I'm going way faster than what I normally do. I know how hurt I normally am. I can't. And all that doubt started just coming in. just started coming in. And as it started coming in, then I started feeling the pain. I started feeling my legs. I started feeling my breath. I started feeling just all the little aches and pains of running. All of that started coming. And I watched the back of John Hinton's head just slowly start pulling away from me. And eventually he was too far for me to catch, and I couldn't get out of my own head anymore. I ended up finishing the race, I don't know, in the 40th, place or something like that, around 17 minutes and something. And it just, I remember just feeling so disappointed in myself. And I thought to myself, well, I gave my all. I don't know what happened to me. And the funny part of the story is John Hinton came looking for me. Now, I don't know if John's, alive to this day, but I have a message for him after that. But he came up looking for me. And he found me sitting down, drinking water, stretching my legs. And he said, "Hey, man, what happened to you?" In a laughing, joking, playing kind of way. He had that kind of moment. And I'll never forget this because it was the first time that I've ever seen him up front. I ever got to see his face. I ever got to see what he actually looked like. And I remember the front of his jersey. It said U.S. Olympic Team, which made perfect sense of why people were talking about him on the bus, which made perfect sense of why his pace was the way it was. It all made sense then, but I was too ignorant to ask the questions to figure it out or to put myself in a place. I didn't set my own limits and barriers. I just challenged myself and went forward. And that was one of the most valuable lessons that I ever had, and the valuable failures that I've ever had. Because if nobody told me what I could do, I would have never done it. Does that make sense? That I challenged myself beyond my means. And until someone talked me out of it, I was succeeding. I was an 18-year-old kid competing with an Olympic runner. And the only thing that did that was that I wasn't scared of a title. I wasn't scared of a position, and I wasn't scared to push my own limits. Now, granted, I failed, but I would have never known the things that I could have accomplished or I could have done if I was intimidated to not push myself. And as I said before, that is the most valuable failure lesson I've ever learned. And I want to thank John Hinton wherever he is. I don't know if he's still alive or anything like that, but he taught me that lesson. And that story, sometimes I believe stories aren't just meant for the person that they're happening to. That story is something that I believe can share with everyone. But I want John Hinton to know, if he's still out there, I'm still training to this day. I'm still training to this day, because at some point in time, I think maybe you might be in your 60s or 70s, and I'm still running. And I want you to know that humbly, I'm still racing you in my mind. With that being said, 24 hours better.